What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to the KMBest podcast. This is our first episode in double digits, the 10th episode of the KMBest podcast. And I would like to remind you, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. We are less than 100 subscribers to 1,000. When we get to 1,000, we'll be able to actually monetize this channel and actually start making money on this podcast, which is something we have absolutely not done so far. Huge shout out to my podcast co-host, Gerry T, as always, for just showing up. Frankly, Gerry, how have you found Sam Wilson to land in Marvel Snap? We've had a week with him. Has he landed for you?
He doesn't land because he's the Falcon. He's in the air. What a silly choice of words, KMBest.
Yeah, it's almost like it was on purpose, but like now you're like
Cam
pointing it out and making
English.
it look stupid.
Yeah, got him.
You know birds land, right? Like they come down from the air occasionally.
They do eventually, but like let's be real. If I were a bird, I'd be up there for a long ass time.
And then what would happen?
I'd probably get tired because
and then
fall to my death, but land.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, continue without nitpicking my I don't even know if I would call that a joke. Like it's not like I made a joke there, but it was like, clever wording. It's not a joke. It's just like, look at that. Don't ruin it.
The bird has landed. He has landed. That shield starts in landing formation, which I think is the most key part of it. And man, you are like a prophet. KM Nostradamus best.
In terms of the decks, yeah.
In terms of like the Call Obsidian and the Mockingbird, that shit is both very powerful, very strong, very fun, honestly, too. And the whole, like, if I draw Sam, hopefully you draw it early, right? And start growing that guy, he's pretty big too.
Yeah, he's just like a fuck. Like if you actually draw him and play him on turn 2, he's just gonna be like 9 power.
It's like, it is kind of weird because there is some tension, which is not a bad thing because these are both great options to have. But it's like, oh, cool, I have this Iron Patriot rolled up for turn 2, and then you draw Sam, and you're just like, I don't know which one I'm supposed to be doing. They're both good. Like, there's probably no wrong answer in a lot of cases, right? But there is more of a little bit of a contention there in the 2-drop slot, which is a good thing, I think. Anything that just fundamentally pushes Marvel Snap a little bit forward, maybe forces people to make different decisions in deck building and stuff, where it's like, well, maybe I want Sam in this deck and don't necessarily want Iron Patriot in this deck. I think that is wonderful. And certainly being a little bit of redundant in the 2-drop slot for a lot of the decks like this. It's like you're happy if you draw one or the either, or even both. You have your option, you can pick, and you have powerful things to be doing on turn 2. And then the shield is setting you up for later stuff like Call, maybe Mockingbird. It's been really good. And that's not even speaking to like any of the very specific synergies you can do with like ongoing stuff.
Yeah. The ongoing deck is actually the one that surprised me the most, and I think it's probably the one that reveals the most to me about this metagame. The ongoing deck I'm referring to here is the Psylocke, Doom 2099, Doom at the top end, Spectrum at the top end, Sam Wilson, Captain America, literally just ongoing pile. I expected that to be baseline pretty terrible, right? And one of the things that Sam Wilson has done, not necessarily on his own, but there are a couple of knock-on effects from him and from other recent cards that have created a metagame that is very open to what that deck does, which is a lot of points that are not vulnerable to Shang-Chi and are not vulnerable to Mobius M. Mobius. Because what Sam Wilson has done is sort of make Red Guardian a lot worse, just because that thing is always there to stop you from actually Red Guardianing a premium target. And so if Red Guardian is a lot worse, Doom 2099 gets a lot better. That's one thing that really does matter. There's also a push in this game right now because of the enabling of Surtur Scar decks with Sam Wilson, because of the fact that even if you're not doing that, you have Cull Obsidian in your Scream deck because of Sam Wilson now. You have a bunch of Shang-Chi targets, which makes it harder to run Enchantress because they are very often in direct competition for that last tech slot in the deck. And so you have this ongoing deck that gets to run Mobius and just have a lot of numbers. And yes, it super dies to Enchantress, but it's hard for the rest of the metagame to justify playing Enchantress. So that was like a big, I am surprised by this. It is the kind of deck where it's like, you know how we talk about sometimes a deck will come out and be good and then just like will not have staying power?
Yeah.
This is a deck that I worry will not have staying power, because if it's ever actually something that people are like, I should devote time to beating that, it gets housed by like the same deck but with Super Scroll, or like any deck but with Enchantress, and it's just like, okay, suddenly you're in a ton of trouble. But until people start doing that, you might as well just like, what I would say is it almost sort of reminds me of playing Mr. Negative, except you get to run Mobius, so you beat actual Mr. Negative.
Yeah. And I mean, for the most part, there are decks that are based on keywords, right? So things like discard or destroy or ongoing. Discard doesn't really have this. There are some cards that are like kind of effective against them, but there's no specific like anti-discard hate card. But it's like, oh, destroy. All right, maybe you play an armor or whatever, or play a deck that like armor is good in and have a pretty good matchup against destroy. Same thing with like these ongoing decks. Doom 2099 is like you find a thing that can reasonably play Enchantress and support it,
or even like U.S. Agent.
Sure, yeah,
like it's just
like
it's good.
There are very like applicable cards that go towards stopping these strategies, and yeah, you just have to find like a pretty reasonable home for them. And it's not like it's Enchantress, no other cards, and you beat them, right? Like your deck still needs to have some amount of output, and maybe the deck is honestly like it does have ongoing stuff, but it's doing ongoing in all the locations.
Yes,
and there is stuff like Sam getting random points of power. So like before Doom 2099, the output was if you neuter like 2 Doom bots with an Enchantress or something that wipes points across the board, it's like it's getting closer to where that's not even all that good enough, right? Because you still have like Captain America in one lane, maybe like a 7 power Sam in one of the lanes, and your deck has to be good and also be an Enchantress deck, which is like a much higher bar to clear, really.
U.S. Agent is the card that strikes me as like, that's still insanely good against Doom 2099. You're still just gonna
Also very true.
That's like a 215. It's just gonna be good. And so if you're playing like a reasonable tempo deck, it's a 215. One of the things that has baffled me about this metagame is where the hell did the Afflict decks go? Because there's basically no reason why a deck like Move Bounce or a deck like Afflict would be bad against the Doom 2099 deck. You have a freaking Ajax. You have Hazmat and US Agent. That's 2 lanes won a lot of the time. And it's just like, I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
Have you tried either of those decks at all? Or
yeah, they're good. No one plays them though. They're just good.
Yeah,
they're just good. They're there.
Snap has weekly content, and especially beginning of a season, you get 2 Series 5 level cards to play with. There's a lot to experiment with, and there is like new card syndrome going on for sure. And we were just kind of like on the tail end of Luke Cage still being very strong, like you talked about US Agent. Well, that ate a nerf. Luke Cage ate a slight nerf, right? So I get why people would be like, well, I don't really want to play with these cards that just got nerfed if like everything was all relatively pretty close in power level, right? There's not a whole lot of incentive to be doing Ajax stuff there. And at this point, the deck is so old. It's like, oh, I've done this before. It's not very exciting. And Sam stuff, there's a lot to explore there. A lot of different shells it fits into. And I think that people are still going through and doing the work on that and learning and finding the thing that is like the funnest for them or the strongest or whatever. And then that's not even talking about Walken Torres, which certainly is not as impactful as the season pass card, but
we're gonna punt on him for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another piece of content that people have to engage with, right? So, I get it. I do want to log on to Marvel Snap and try to have like a novel experience, like try a new deck that I saw or whatever. It's very rarely I want to log in and play this deck that's a year and a half old or whatever.
All right, well, you don't have to call me out like that. I feel like that all the time. I love logging in and playing the same RSM deck I've been playing for 4 months, except this time I've replaced Red Guardian with Mobius M. Mobius. Truly genius level deck building from you, boy.
I mean, it is. They don't call him the best for nothing.
Yep, it's just pure genius gaming.
I will say, though, in your defense, RSM is the one thing that is a little bit more replayable than other
Yeah.
stuff because,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of variance inherent with that card. Obviously, like, very powerful, very strong. You're mostly just like, I play a big thing that make points in different ways, but, you know, it's a little bit different, so.
It's a fairly unique experience because it's one of the few decks in the game that can just run like not necessarily only tech cards, but you're not going to find many decks that are able to capably run Alioth, Shang-Chi, Mobius, and then like Legion or whatever. Like any normal deck trying to do that is like either a pile or a Wiccan deck, and even then that might be a pile. And so you end up with like just like a lot of ability to do things with that deck that you otherwise cannot do or address problems that otherwise would be unaddressable. Like I played a bounce deck with Darkhawk and Cassandra Nova in it, and I ran into an Arashim gamer who hit me with 2 Shang-Chis and an Alioth. And it's like I won that game anyway, but still, like that is the appeal of Arashim, is like sometimes you just do stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's not an experience you're really gonna have against like a normal deck,
anywhere
right?
else.
So
there's nothing else like
they
comes close to that.
They tried to zero over you.
Yeah, I mean, like I got lucky and I played well, which is the best confluence of things. But yeah, like it's just one of those things where it's like they went for a Shang-Chi on my guy right as I bounced it, and it was like haha, and then they had a second Shang-Chi from the location that doubles the card you just drew. And I played around that one totally accidentally. So, you know, half good, half lucky. That's my favorite thing to do.
Dude, that location kind of gets me because I I tend to play like the rightmost card a lot of the time.
Oh, you play the one that's been generated and you're like, oh man, I just gave up the info?
Yeah.
That's tough. That's so tough.
I've done that. Normally it's like, all right, it takes one time for me to learn my lesson. That one I've done multiple times, and I'm not even convinced that I won't do it again.
I am happy to report that I think I've made that mistake one time and I will never make it again. Like it's like
well done.
Yeah.
Much like luck and confluence, that is the best way to go about making mistakes.
Yeah, that hopefully, you know, I'm sure it could happen. I've been really abusing my sleep schedule recently. Like just awful stuff from me. And so anything can happen. I lost a game yesterday, a 4-cube game that I lost entirely because I accidentally played Grapple Arrow second to last instead of last, so it pulled my guy out of the location that it was going to win and into a location I had already won. Like that's just some stuff that'll happen. Like sometimes you'll just do that. It'll be 6 in the morning and you'll have been streaming since 1, and then you will do that.
As soon as you said Grapple Arrow, I'm just like, ooh, like I know where this is going. Yep. I've been there.
Like, I made the exact correct read. I was like, okay, here's what they're going to do. They're going to play this in this lane. Here's how I beat this. Made the exact correct read and then just totally beefed the execution. Excellently done by me. Yes, order lull.
Order lull.
And I want to circle back to Sam Wilson because I feel like people that watch us kind of know at this point what we're about tangent-wise, you know? But
also, he's a bird, so he might do some circling.
Yeah, before he lands. I think that Sam Wilson, in combination with Bullseye, is sort of the card that pushed the metagame towards this direction. Like, last week's tier list, I was talking about how good I thought Mobius was into the meta and how more people have been adopting Shang-Chi. And now we are at the point where more people have been adopting Mobius, and good deck with Mobius is a great way to win. And Shang-Chi is not necessarily on the outs, relatively speaking, but last week he was the focus, this week Mobius is. And I think you could put a lot of that onto, like, if you look at, like, the ebb and flow of the metagame. The reason we were on Enchantress a few weeks ago was because of all the Moonstone decks. Those started to die out. Now, suddenly, people want to go back to Shang-Chi because they're playing Scar stuff, for example. Then you also have the fact that Sam Wilson comes out. This is a card that is excellent against Red Guardian, pushing you a little bit away from Red Guardian. It's not as good against Red Guardian as you think, but it's good enough at protecting the things that are really big. And you have the discard deck, which is vulnerable to both Mobius and Shang-Chi, give or take priority here. It is always going to be making a guy big enough to do that, unless you stop them from doing it with Mobius, so you're going to have relevant targets for one or both a lot of the time. And so you have a bunch of different things causing this fluctuation in the metagame, from 28 days ago when people were playing a lot of Enchantress, to a week ago when that had switched to Shang-Chi, to now when Mobius is, I think, sort of the card du jour. And it's interesting to track this sort of shift in the metagame as it develops.
It has been a while since I played with MMM, and getting to dust off the beautiful chibi variants. I fell back in love with my boy.
Sure.
It's been a good time, and it is tough because it's one of those cards where you don't necessarily see the impact that it has, because like you don't know if your opponent drew the scar or whatever.
I am the king of drawing Mobius on turn 6 in a matchup where it would have been amazing on turn 5 or before. Like at any point, like
where you would have snapped probably.
Yes, I am so bad at drawing him on time. It is a genuine skill issue where I am absolutely incredible at like being in a matchup that I'm favored in because of card X and then just never seeing card X the entire time or at any point when it would be relevant. Oh god.
But do you have the chibi variant?
Yeah, I think so. The Rain Gonzalez one?
It is probably her. Yeah. I know that.
Yeah, I do.
You know, there's baggage there, but I mean, it's if you have the good variant and you draw it on turn 6. I mean, at least for me, it still makes me happy. I don't know.
Nothing has ever made me less happy than a Mobius on 6.
You're a little late, buddy, but you're real cute, you know?
I don't know. I don't know. You're like, I don't know. I've never had that thought in my life. I've only thought, like, you're late and I hate you. Like, because he's such a...
YouTube comments, you get it.
He's such a bad cube equity card. And, like, one of the reasons why cards like Cosmo and Shang end up being better cube equity than cards like Mobius is that they don't have to be face up for you to get the value. You can get cubes out of them when the cubes double on turn 6. Nobody stays against the Mobius when they've lost to the Mobius. And it just never, ever happens. And so, like, if you have him in the good matchups, you're very often, like, priced into snapping in order to make up for that. Because otherwise, he's not even worth putting in your freaking deck, right? Like, it's just like a, I hope I don't lose to this kind of thing. Which is fine, but it's also just, like, it's just a card with, like, dynamics that I truly hate. Because it is the only card that can address some of these situations, right? If you want to keep discard, like, in a dumpster, you kind of need to do that and make them, like, work their way around the game in some other way, other than just, like, making 10 million giant dudes. This is a card that there's nothing else I can do to do that, but also he doesn't help to do that once it's already happened. He can't undo anything. The way even, like, a Luke Cage can undo stuff, or, Shang and Cosmo and things like that, like, these are cards that can prevent things and do so on the turn they're played. He does nothing on the turn he's played.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And also, I think that at this point, Marvel Snap has been out for long enough, and we keep talking about the same kinds of tech cards. I think like Red Guardian is the newest, coolest example of that, and also seems like a more modern version of a tech card where it just has like general utility versus honing in on something very specific, right? But I think we're kind of at a point where we should probably start getting like second versions of these things, or at least like I would hope, where we've talked so much already about like splitting Luke Cage or whatever and having like two different versions of it or whatever. But like what does a Cosmo-esque version of a Mobius style effect even look like? Because I agree with you. It is weaker than those cards as a result of that thing, where it's like you need to be proactive with it. And they had kind of that problem on release where it was like a 2-cost card. It was like way easier to just kind of like weave into your curve, way easier to just justify slotting into any given deck. And certainly you don't want that. Like you don't want it to be like a nothing burger opportunity cost to play a hate card. Well, you do. I know that you personally do.
I kind of think they should 2-3 Mobius again. That is what I want, yes.
Yeah, okay. And I think that that's fair. Maybe some version of that, I guess. I don't know. Like half as effective, or at least like effective against the more offensive things, like Scar for sure.
Yeah.
But Maybe it like doesn't interact with locations or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's
Yeah.
symmetrical, something like that.
Yeah, neither you nor your opponent can discount energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Players cannot.
Yeah.
Or just like cards have their printed energy cost,
Yeah.
right?
Put that in the next event, Glenn. Put that in the next Sanctum Showdown, which we actually have to talk about. Do you want to talk about Sanctum Showdown?
Yeah, let's do it. I haven't looked at it very much. So
I am the worst person on every event because I like this is the downside of I think we talked about this at the end of last episode where it's like I actually just love playing Marvel Snap, right? Like
the base game.
Yeah, the base game, Marvel Snap. I love that. I don't want anything to take me away from that. And I feel like they have such a great formula, and every time they do a game mode, they're like, what's the thing from our formula we're gonna totally fuck up today? Like, what's the well, here's our formula. It's X plus Y plus Z plus A plus B plus C, okay? What of those are we throwing out the window today? Is it cubes? What's it gonna be? Is it energy? What's it gonna be? Like, every time they're just like, yank, get something cool out of here. It's just like, oh man, I'd rather just play the normal game. But I realize I'm a psychopath for that.
No, I don't think so, because I mean we're here, we're playing the game. Obviously, we love it to some degree, right? And I think that that's awesome. Like if you love it that much, that is great. You're definitely a person who should be making content about this game, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
And I feel the same way. I do love the base game, and there are definitely things that they can use to tweak and tune some of the mechanics where like high voltage, okay, like maybe a little bit too much. But if you do a variant of it where it's like a little bit more extreme, but not quite high voltage, it's like, does that move the needle enough to make it a novel experience compared to just playing base Marvel Snap? Probably not. So I do understand when if they are going to approach like energy, number of turns, like that sort of thing, it's like you kind of do have to make dramatic changes in order for it to feel significantly different. But in general, I do think that, you know, Marvel Snap, while great, is a mobile game. It is a thing that does incentivize you to log in daily, and maybe that is a thing that is going to kind of burn you out on like that experience in the base game, where maybe it is healthier or better for you if you're just engaging with it like once a week, but you feel kind of priced in because you have to do your dailies, you have to collect your 25 credits every 8 hours. I can't imagine anyone does that, but
that's the stuff I hate, and that's what these events feel like to me.
I think it's different where it is giving players a different experience other than the base game. It is kind of like the reward for them making you log in daily and kind of like ruining base Marvel Snap for you is like, okay, well, we'll give you a fun mini game, and maybe that's cool enough and fun enough. So it's like a solution to a problem that they created or whatever, which is
I don't know. This is why like I'm the psycho, right? Because I feel like the base game is good and everything else is a chore. And the reason it's a chore is because of card acquisition, and these game modes all have cards in them. And it's like,
I can appreciate the fun modes for being fun modes, but I agree with you. It does feel like a chore because ultimately it's like, oh, I'm under a time crunch, and they give you generally enough time to complete the event if you happen to have enough time. But like, you know, 2 weeks, maybe that's good timing for some people. Maybe it's bad timing for other people. I've had it land on both for me, where I have not like fully completed, I think, most of the events at this point, but I've been able to get like the Series 4 card that they've given away. And it's like, okay, that's good enough. I can't get these borders or this variant or whatever. That's okay. But I definitely do feel that pressure of having to log on, which I think for them is more of a feature than a
that's
bug.
an upside, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't want to be like making a complaint that they then read as like, no, actually this is a compliment or whatever. But I don't know. I wish that you could approach it a little bit more leisurely if it is indeed supposed to be the solution to like, oh, you're kind of bored with the base game and logging in every day. You know, I think it would be a better solve to those things.
Bad news, motherfucker. This is the least leisurely game mode I have ever seen in my entire life. And I'll tell you why.
no.
Because we don't have a lot of info on the game mode itself. The game mode looks like it's Marvel Snap, except your goal is to win specific locations on specific turns, after which it then becomes a different location that you're supposed to win, right? So it's like you got to win this location, and then you got to win another location, and so it's like you get like 1 point per location, except for the target location, which is like 4 points or 5 points or something like that, is what it seems to look like.
And then what? How many points do you have to get?
They said I think 15 or 16. And so it's the major difference, like if we're analyzing this through my paradigm of here is what the formula for Marvel Snap is, now throw one piece of it away. The piece that's getting thrown away here is the emphasis on hidden information, to some degree.
Yes.
Where a lot of current Marvel Snap encourages you very, very, very heavily to save your output until turn 6, where turn 6 is the thing that really matters. Where in this game, you can get enough ahead early that if you just pick up the 1 locations or whatever, you're going to be able to do what you're going to need to do. And that's a real departure from classic Marvel Snap. But the reason I think people are excited for this mode has almost nothing to do with the very minimal gameplay that we've seen thus far. And everything to do
cards
with the free cards. Yes, there are 3 cards in the shop. There are also 4 potential redeems of the a random series 4 or 5 card. And so when these shop images showed up on Twitter, people were saying stuff like 7 free cards, holy shit, new era of Marvel Snap, they're so generous. And I actually made a video where I was like, I am begging you guys not to expect anything more than like 2 or 3 of these cards. There is no goddamn way. Like, my theory for that is basically that everything we know about this game mode, everything we know suggests that there will be ways to earn points, but the only one we know about is that you get however many points you have in the game. And the numbers in the shop are so damn high. It's like 1,200 for one of the cards in the event, and 2,150 for a pull on Series 4 and 5. And it's like, I can do math, and 3,600 divided by 16, let's assume that's how many points I get per game, is more than 200 games in order to get those cards. And that is without even acknowledging that they've been a little bit coy about whether there's going to be like a stamina or ticket mechanic limiting how much you are even able to play this game mode. And so people are really like, I feel like when I made my video, I was very afraid that like, this is going to be the thing that breaks the goodwill cycle, where they're gonna
like, we just got that though.
I know. But like, if everyone is expecting 7 free cards and they get 2, they're going to be pissed. They're going to be so mad.
So, High Voltage had a quest system.
Yes, and people have been assuming, basically, that quests are involved here. They've just been, and to be clear, no evidence. Literally just whole cloth hallucinating the idea that quests are involved, because otherwise the numbers are very hard for you to get.
Yeah, evidence to me is 200 games to get one of the things.
No, 200 games to get all 3 of the new cards.
All 3.
It's not like that. Actually does sound like the kind of thing they do, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it's ballpark.
Yeah, like whenever I think about that, I'm like, you know, that looks about right for three new cards, even if they're not like amazing. Okay. Like, yeah, 200 games, you're getting free cards. Like, I buy it, right? Like, I buy that.
Hold up. There's other stuff in the shop, though.
There is, right? But they've also been really specific. Like, publicly, they have said stuff like, we want this shop to be, and I think the word Glenn used was robust. Like, we want this shop to be robust, which is a nice way of saying, you are not supposed to complete this shop. We want you to pick and choose.
Yeah,
and I think
don't like that.
I think that's not necessarily a mistake, but the part of this that might be a mistake is, I think, the idea that for anyone who isn't like necessarily flush with tokens like I am, that anything would be better than getting a card. Like, there's this sort of like
no,
non-fungibility to the cards, right? Where it's like, for someone like me, I have, I don't know, 70, 80,000, 60,000. I don't know how many tokens I have. It's a bunch, okay? For someone like me, I'll just spend 9,000 tokens on these cards. Or I'll spend the gold equivalent of that in order to get them earlier so I can make content with it. I don't care, right? Like, this is my job. But for everyone else...
Tax write-off, baby.
Yes, but for everyone else, you have to go get these cards. There's nothing else in the shop. If you get a border instead of these cards, I'm going to call you an idiot. And it's like, that is the problem with the choice, right? Like, it's like, technically you have a choice, but the strictures of the system, it's like the way you have like the choice to not have a job, you know? You can choose not to have a job, but you'll be homeless, right? Like, you can choose it, but it's like technically a choice, but not really. Like, it's one of those things. Like, you can choose not to eat or whatever, you know? You can make that choice. But like, can you?
I guess what ends up happening is this very robust shop ends up being the place where you go when you recognize that you can't get the second or third card in time before the event ends, and you have the leftover currency, and now this is the thing that you get to select.
I think you have nailed it. Yes, I think that is exactly how it goes. I think it also
it's your pity prize. It's like, yeah, you couldn't get all the stuff you wanted, so here's some bullshit. You know?
Yes, dude, you're at the arcade and you wanted like the big super soaker, but you didn't get the amount of tickets, and so you got to get like the squirt gun instead. Oh my god, owned. Good.
No,
Lord.
dude, it's not even squirt gun versus super soaker. It's keychain versus super soaker. You know, it's like this thing that, like, yeah, maybe technically has utility or whatever, but it's like, you didn't need a keychain. You would have never bought a keychain.
You're not here for a keychain. That's not why you came here.
No, it's just like this, I couldn't get the thing I wanted, and this is the only other thing you'll sell me. So
that's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about that upside. I think the other thing it has is that it doubles as like what I would guess to be like probably a fairly efficient way to spend gold. Like, if there is like a ticket or stamina system, I'd be willing to bet that like buying refills is like probably a good EV choice in terms of converting your resources into cards. Like,
what makes you think that there's a stamina system?
I'm not saying necessarily stamina. It could be tickets. But,
well, I mean, it's the same thing.
Basically,
right?
what happened is like people asked about it, and they were like, "I don't want to tell you." And to me, that's like, "Oh, there's a stamina system." Okay, it's like,
god damn. All right.
Like,
I mean, we'll see. We'll see when it all finally comes out.
Between the lines, but if I was making a system, if I was making a game mode that had a stamina system in it, and I knew everyone would hate it, it would not be the thing I would tell you on day one. Let me put it that way. Like.
Yeah, that's fair, but also if that's how you feel like you have to conduct yourself, maybe you should think about whether or not it should have a stamina system, if everyone's going to hate it. I don't know.
Like, there's also like a resource in the shop that we don't know what it is, called scrolls. Those could be tickets. Those could be like point boosts. Those could be anything, right? They could be stamina refills. But I don't know. You know, like, we don't know what they are, but we have some guesses.
I'm going to reserve judgment until it comes out, because it just sounds like there's too much information that we don't have.
There's a lot.
And it's entirely possible it comes out. It's just like, oh, I would have to play like a bajillion games to get a card. And
I think that is likely. Like, the math I did suggested it would be about, you know, give or take like 80 games per 1,200 cost card.
Right, but again, you don't have all the information.
Yes.
Right, so it's entirely possible. Like, they could have quests or something. Yeah. I don't know, but once we have all the information, can look at it, and then I will decide whether or not I want to engage. I think that's the only way to realistically engage with this thing, compared to speculating and just being like, "Yep, goodwill time is over."
Well, to be clear, I don't think that goodwill time is over. Like, if this is an event that you can get 2 or 3 free cards from free to play, that's the best event they've ever done. If this is an event that you can get 7 cards from free to play, I will eat a hat live on Twitch.
Eric Danger Taylor style.
I mean, like, I probably
No one is going to get that reference.
I will not actually eat a hat, but only because I Googled it and I learned that hats actually have like carcinogens and stuff in them from other people making bets where they would eat a hat and that it is very unsafe to do. But I would do something like reasonably stupid, I think. If it turns out that like 7 cards free to play is possible. I guess it's maybe possible that one person ever could do it. I don't know. But I would be pretty
It costs
shocked,
time.
Yeah.
It costs time. Even if it doesn't cost money, like I imagine they're asking you to play for like 10 hours a day or something, which is not feasible.
Someone kind of specifically feasible is a good word because I think there's an answer from Glenn in the Q&A where someone was like, how feasible is it to get all 3 of the new cards? And Glenn was like, his answer was, it is certainly feasible. Which, again, not the answer I would give if it was expected that you would do that. You know what I mean? Like, just not what I would say.
Is it feasible if you're an oil baron? Is that what he means?
that was my understanding, right? They didn't ask, is it feasible free to play? They asked if it was feasible, and he said, it is certainly feasible. Which is like, you can do it.
Technically possible that someone,
yes,
emphasis on the one, could do it.
It's, I don't know. I'm really interested to see how this lands because I made my video and it was basically like a cry for help. That was like, guys, I am begging you not to get your hopes up for this. Like, I'm actually hands and knees begging you not to expect 7 cards from this. Because if you expect 7 cards from this, here's what's going to happen. You're not going to get 7 cards from this. And then you're going to be mad in my comments at me about it. Don't do that, please.
Yeah. A lot of this is messaging, right? I feel like if they announced the event, gave, whatever details they wanted to release about the specifics of it, and were like, yo, you can get, up to 2 cards free to play or whatever. People would be like, yo, this is sick, right? And then it's like, whoa, there's like 7 cards up for grabs in the shop. And like, what do I need to do to get those? Well, now you need to get something else, but like you have been told you get at least 2. Yeah. That's cool.
To me, this is a messaging failure in as much as anything is. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that if you start with like the good news and then lead with the bad news, that's probably pretty good. Or start with the good news, follow with the bad news. And then if you're just like, if you start with getting their hopes up and then give them the bad news, that's not going to end well, right? It's like ultimately end of day, same thing. You're capable of getting, you're feasible of getting X amount of free cards or whatever, but it's feasible. Like, lead with that first. Lead with that first.
Like, a lot of their dancing around this has left me, I guess, not necessarily disappointed with their communication, because I think it is still good that we get these answers, but disappointed with the strategy that they seem to have chosen to employ. And again, I could be really wrong. I could be reading into stuff incorrectly. I totally understand that. But to me, it does seem like in the video somewhere you could say, like, here are the cards in the event. We expect free-to-play players to get at least 2 of these. You know?
Yeah, at the very least, it's an opportunity for them to promote, you can get 1 card, you can get 2 cards, maybe it's 3 cards, I don't know. And it's like, that just looks good.
Yep.
Right?
Like,
but the way the information was presented, people were like, hey, 7. And it's like, I don't think that's real.
That's the thing. Like, it's another one of these Deadpool's Diner type scenarios where it's like, wow, when you actually zoom out, this is very generous. It was just messaged poorly, right? Like, if we're getting a bunch of cards from this event, then that's actually dope as hell. Like, if we get like 2 or 3 free cards, that's better than every other event. That's really good.
Exactly.
And so it's like, oh, okay, that like this messaging has been handled in such a way that what might be the most generous event ever, what certainly has the possibility to be the most generous event ever, is now going to be pilloried if it's not the most generous event ever by a factor of 7.
That's a lot.
And it's like, okay, why'd we do that? Why'd you set that up?
And it's all as a result of them, like say it is two cards that you could get free to play. I feel like maybe that's ballpark.
That'd be great.
I could see it being like 1 and some change, or like 1 and then close to 2, where like if you
Oh.
spend like a couple hundred gold, maybe it inches you across the finish line, just like incentivize you to spend a little bit. I don't think that that's asking a ton because people you can just earn gold from playing the game. You know what I mean?
Yes, but also it's like I would hope they would do that 2 close to 3 and not 1 close to 2.
I mean I would hope so too, but given how things have been previously, it like that's a big jump, right? And then that also means that the expectation for future events is 2 close to 3, right? So if it's like 1 and you get to use the remainder to buy out the majority of the shop in terms of like cosmetics and the various other things that they have as offerings, then it's like that's similar to Deadpool's Diner, right?
Yeah.
And that it's not wild to me. That wouldn't be shocking. Um, but I feel like them offering up like, oh well, if you don't want these series 4 cards, if you don't want one new card and a bunch of cosmetics, you could just get a missing series 4 or 5 card. And like we are benevolent gods, benevolent devs. We are giving you the option to purchase an
Yeah,
unowned
at
series 4
like
or 5 card. And then that ends up biting them in the ass. Like them actually being nice and
yeah.
giving you options, creating like that robust shop that they were talking about. It's like
Yeah.
I really hope it doesn't go down like that.
Yeah, cuz like I think this is what I talk about, like the backdoor use case for the shop is like a bundle. Like the backdoor use case for the shop is you get a place to just effectively use gold to buy cards or
Hmm.
use whatever. I it would probably have to be gold, assuming there's some sort of stamina or ticket system. Use gold to buy tickets that convert into cards. Effectively, you're using gold to buy cards, right? Like that's what's happening, right? And so a backdoor use case for a shop like this is that it's basically like a build your own bundle for the entire player
Sure.
base. And
Yeah.
so you not only have like the more I talk about this, the more I come to the conclusion that they're actually very smart and this is probably amazing monetization. I just wish it was messaged differently.
I do too. Unless they're giving us 7 cards for
Yeah,
free.
unless
In
if
which
they're
case,
actually giving us 7 free cards, I actually think they're probably dumb and it's terrible monetization. But thank you.
but I'm guessing that is not the reality.
I am also guessing that is not the reality. Yeah, because like the more we talk about it, it's like if you pitch this shop, there's basically just like only upside, right? It's pretty generous without being too generous, right? Let's say you get 2 or 3 cards, something like that. Then players have options with which to use the rest of their currency, lower prizes, like you're at the carnival. That's exactly what you want. You want them engaging because then, maybe they won't reach the break point to get the second card, but they'll reach the break point to grind out, 800 instead of 1200 so they can get the Jeff emote or whatever, right? Or a border or something like that. There's incentives everywhere. It doubles as a backdoor build your own bundle type thing for anyone who actually wants to whale. Like the more I talk about it, the more I'm convinced this is a very clever and smart and well put together idea that may get totally undermined by how it was presented as something that was going to be very generous, even though I don't think it was necessarily presented as that. Like they didn't say 7 free cards, but if you put 7 free cards on the screen, I don't really think you can blame the player base for being like, whoa, every other event we've had, the point was to clear the shop. Every other event, that was the whole point. And then you
yeah,
show all that stuff in the shop, and everyone assumes that you'll be able to get it. And it's like, I don't think you had to. I don't think you're like at fault here for not explicitly messaging against that. But it does seem like the kind of thing that could be an issue. If you probably should be internally being like, next time this comes up, we need to like explicitly message against this so people don't get in that on that level.
yeah. I mean, part of doing what you're doing and announcing these events is to create hype and be like, okay, cool. Me as a player, I know to log in on this day specifically, and to make sure that I do this and to like start grinding away at this thing. And as a dev, when you are releasing this, in order to get people hyped for it and maintain that hype, you do also have to uh contain expectation in a lot of cases, especially if you are specifically releasing a shop that you know that players are not going to be able to buy out. It's just like, oh, here is the shop with all of these things. I don't think it's right for people to assume that, oh, they'll be able to get everything free to play. because that's just silly. It's ridiculous. It's
It is
absurd
silly.
compared to how they've operated. You know, if that were the case, it's like when we see like the daily rewards just like doubling or
Yeah.
tripling or
Yes.
whatever, like
Yeah.
why wouldn't they just do that? I don't get it.
Yeah, like I've seen people like in the early moments of this releasing, people were like, "Is this their solution to card acquisition?" It's like, no, it's not, because that's not what's happening, right? Like it's just. I think people read into that new era of Snap and like how generous the compensation was, and they're like, "That's how it'll be. We'll get a compensation's worth of stuff every month," and it's like, no, you won't. Like, I could buy the new
Okay.
era of Marvel Snap being like, I don't know, 1.5, maybe 2 times as generous as the previous era of Marvel Snap. I could buy that. I'm not sure I do, but you could talk me into it. I could not buy 7 times as generous. That does not seem financially sustainable.
Yeah, games normally do the 7 times as generous thing like a month before they announce end of service or whatever. And
Yeah,
I imagine that is very much not
isn't that what you
what
want to
is
see?
happening here.
Yeah.
So, man, RIP to all the fallen mobile games out there.
Mm.
I have many deceased beloved games, unfortunately. But
Any you want to name?
uh to save myself the embarrassment, no.
Okay, because like if
There,
this,
there there are things there are things that I love, right? And I had a lot of fun playing, but nothing that I would have recommended anyone else play.
yeah, I like
So it's like that's my own personal love and disappointment, right? Like that's my own sense of loss.
right, like when you the concept of like failed gotcha game, like I understand it academically has to exist, but also it's like, man, that must be some trash. Like that must be
Yeah,
some booty ass.
it is some slop, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just gobble that shit up.
Yes.
Like people love reality TV, they love slop. I am not immune to it.
I'm a slop
Uh,
fan.
I enjoy Statham movies, and I enjoy like real life drama. I want to get all up in it, like at arm's length at least, like not get directly involved, but I want to hear all about it. That's my reality
Yep.
TV. I do love slop. I it's not specifically Real Housewives or whatever, but
We've talked about The
that's
Beekeeper, right?
Beekeeper. I mean, it's solid. It's good.
That's I
And
love that movie. That movie is amazing.
I
Like,
I genuinely like the Statham stuff, and I think at this point I've seen the entire catalog probably multiple times. But like, I'm not gonna try and tell you they're good. They're good movies. They're good films or whatever.
I mean, they are effectively wrestling. Like that's what they
Yeah,
are. And like
yeah,
some of them are better at being that than others. Like Beekeeper is great because it's basically Jason Statham hunting down Hunter Biden is like how I understand that
yeah,
movie, where it's
yeah.
like Jason Statham hunting down the evil son of the president. And like it's made at around the same time. Like I don't like the weirdest thing about that movie is I don't think they thought they were making a political movie. Like they thought they
I
were
didn't.
just doing something, and then it turns out that like the movie is about Jason Statham hunting down not literally Hunter Biden, but like it is definitely Hunter Biden.
It's
like
like character's name is Haunter Bowden or
yeah,
whatever, and
no,
it's
no,
like,
it's
oh,
like
totally, yeah.
yeah, it's just like it's
Any
crazy.
relation to real or existing people is entirely fictional and
Yeah, it's like
whatever.
Josh Hutcherson playing not Hunter Biden, the president's son who runs like an illegal phone scam company. And it's like
And
that's
honestly, man, I didn't even make that connection until you told
it
me,
rocks so
because
hard.
when I do watch those movies, I turn brain off.
Oh my
Brain go off.
that movie is so good. Like if you pitched me if the elevator pitch for a movie is Jason Statham hunts down Donald Trump Jr. Sold. Like just give me Beekeeper 2, but a different person is president and his son is terrible in a different way. I would
Yeah.
watch that. I would watch that
Oh,
so
dude,
oh my god.
Beekeeper 2 gets announced, I'm gonna watch it.
The presidential fail son task force Beekeeper.
Yeah,
Oh
sure,
my
I'm in.
god. I
I
want
don't
that so
care.
bad. I want that so bad.
Statham's in it. I'm watching it. But
Other
I'm not
things
gonna
I
tell
want.
you that you should watch it.
I would recommend that movie. Other things I want a debate between Hunter Biden and Donald Trump Jr. I or maybe not like a debate. I want them to like hang out and be friends. I feel like they would get along.
Yeah, I was gonna say they should have to. They should be forced to do like team building exercises, like the cringiest ones.
I just like I'm imagining like team building exercises, but it's like, you know, a sign taped to like a prostitute. Like that's what that's what those guys are like super into. Like that's their like when you think about like the Venn diagram of Hunter Biden and Donald Trump Jr., the thing in the middle is like drugs, women, and like everything else is outside of it.
I mean, they probably would be besties.
They would be like that's what I really believe that like they would totally they would hang out. I feel that
dude, it's like a platonic Romeo and Juliet situation, you know, it's
where
like
it's
our families are warring,
but we both love cocaine. We both really love cocaine and hookers. Like we are enormous.
And nothing can keep us apart from each other.
not a thing. We constantly meet, like we're at the same brothel talking through the wall.
yeah. Like, okay, the one thing that can stop us is the law, or perhaps Jason Statham.
The presidential fail-son task force. We are so like anyone who's still listening at this point.
I started talking about slop and my love of slop and how everyone should be able to enjoy slop. I forget what got me on that topic. So
the gotcha games that you've played that failed, Marvel Snap, in the context of those games end up servicing 7 times as generous.
Yeah, they are not 7xing. Okay. The thing that I wanted to get to was, when do you think development started for this mode? How long do you think it takes to make a mode?
That's a really good question, because the answer I would give you is before the new era of Marvel Snap.
Yeah. So like that's kind of the other thing here, where it's like we are technically in their alleged new era of Marvel Snap, right? Awesome. Excellent. Happy to be here. Love being here. Definitely a better era than the last one. It's been great so far, right? Is this technically still the new era if it was being devved in the old era? This might be an old era event. We may not be able to count this as a new era event.
We're actually getting 0.8 cards. Then you have to spend to get up to 1.
Okay, look, man. Look, I was being optimistic at 1.8, maybe 2.8, right?
0.8, baby.
Or 2.2 or something,
Sure.
But 0.8, it hurts. It physically pains me because you might be right.
I don't know. We'll never really know what goes on behind the scenes in terms of stuff like that. My understanding is I don't really think that they're going to be able to modify anything in response to feedback for a million different reasons, right? Because they've been working on this game mode for who knows how many months, and now it comes out in a week. And so you probably aren't in there it's not like you're in there slashing prices. You know what I mean? You're not no. What's the stuff's in the video? It's not like stuff's gonna be all right, we are running a half off sale here. We are.
No, I mean, they can change stuff for sure, and it's entirely possible that your feedback does do that. But if a lot of the feedback they see is yo, this looks really great! Exclamation point, smiley face, hashtag Marvel Snap New Era. Then this may be a bad takeaway because you thought that you were getting 7 free cards.
Yes.
And you basically just told them that you love whatever they're serving up for you, right? So if you do want to provide feedback, be like, hey, I think that we should maybe get 2 cards per event or whatever. I think that's reasonable.
I mean, I think 3, if it is possible to get 3 free cards in this event, it is. And when I say possible, I mean for a free-to-play player. I don't want to do the certainly feasible shit, but if
a load-bearing feasible.
If it is possible for a free-to-play player to get 3 free cards in this event, I would call it a massive win. I would call it the best event they've ever made. And I will do that if that's possible. Easily.
Hashtag Marvel Snap New Era.
Yeah, actual hashtag Marvel Snap New Era. Knocked it out of the park. Amazing. I'm not expecting 7. I would love 3. I'm expecting less than 3, frankly.
I am too, but either way, the mode sounds kind of interesting. It's similar to Iron Patriot to me, honestly, where it has the same kind of incentives. Or maybe, I mean, it is entirely possible that like the best strategy in the game mode is going to be to win on like turns 3, 4, and 5 or something, and to just like lock up those turns. But it does seem that you could kind of like snowball and get a significant advantage by being very low to the ground and contesting those locations early, getting an early point lead, and then trying to snag a few at the end. You know,
Yeah.
so it's doing a lot of the same stuff as Iron Patriot, honestly, and probably incentivizes people to play a lot of like maybe Maximus type cards or whatever.
What I find interesting is like, okay, you won this one previously, right? Like we're going back to a target location that you won previously, but you like invested heavily. Like let's say you put like 0 Ebony Maw or whatever, right? Like you used up your board space real estate on it previously, and then they're able to more efficiently use the board space to take it later. Like that's an interesting dynamic too.
It is for sure. And so I don't know if it is. I think like level 0 is probably just like really aggressive, kind of like zoo styley things where it's like, yeah, this is pretty good at just like getting points early, winning locations, and then maybe getting like the bonus points, the extra 1-pointers for winning other locations, and then maybe you get a 5 again at some other point or something.
You know who seems really good in this game mode? Sam Wilson.
You are very correct. Yeah.
That guy seems good. That guy seems good in this game mode.
Even like Squirrel Girl or whatever.
Yeah. I've seen people speculating that what people are going to want to do is like you're going to want to play like Move Bounce or whatever, and that one didn't make a lot of sense to me because it's like I get it, the idea is you can pick up your power from the location and then move it to the other location. Sure. But like that takes a whole turn. Like you're not winning the location if you pick up your power from it that turn. So then what?
Thing I could see being good is move, maybe no bounce, because yeah, you don't want to have a turn where you like play a beast or a toxin and like just don't have any power displayed that turn, like, right?
Card Ghost Spider, card Doctor Strange. Those seem good. Those do seem
quite good. Those seem quite good, yeah.
The other cards, I have no idea. Like,
yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Like, what if you're supposed to play, like, okay, it's Zoo, but with Cull Obsidian, Ghost Spider, Doctor Strange. Boom. Drop it on him. Like, that's the kind of thing where it's like, I can see things like that making sense.
Yeah, so you're doing the, like, point slam thing, but you have a little bit of utility in terms of, like, you know, you're not just, like, all in committed to, like, the middle and right locations. You can still, like, redistribute your call to the leftmost one. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. And so, like, that kind of stuff is, like, that's sort of where my head is at when it comes to game planning for the mode. Obviously, there's still a little bit that we don't know, but, like, things like that seem really appealing to me. The other thing about this game mode that I really like is that the method of accruing points is however many points you get in the game. And that happens win or lose, which is they have, if I'm reading this correctly, unless there are quests that require wins or something like that, this is another game mode that has no punishment for losing, at least as far as we know, barring, you know, stamina or ticket mechanics.
Also, if you're losing and it's not by much, that's not bad.
It's basically a win. Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty damn close to a win. And I guess in terms of like feeding other players, you try to like feed them 20 instead of, you know, just 16 or something. Is that possible? You know what I mean?
I don't know. We should, what we need to do is devise like a sort of social contract for this game mode where everyone is maximizing for both players. Like we got to figure out a way to do conquest communism, but for this, because
agreed.
Like whatever that method is, we're gonna try to work it out and popularize it as best as possible, because that will enable as many people as possible to get as much free stuff as possible. Collusion is the name of the game, folks, and we are here for it.
Realistically, as players, my Marvel Snap comrades, we are in it together.
There is a fundamentally adversarial relationship between the company that makes anything you buy and you. It is ostensibly symbiotic. You are spending less than you would to make it yourself, but however, it is adversarial in the sense that their job is to get as much from you as you are comfortable spending along the curve of supply and demand. Their job is to hit you at exactly the point where you will spend the most money on something. They don't want to set it too high because then you won't spend the money on it. They wanted to set it as high as you possibly can that you will still spend at. That point is what all companies are aiming for from you, the point of profit maximization, and that is an adversarial relationship.
Also, if we are in a game and you are definitely winning and I am definitely losing, it costs me nothing to not contest your 5-point lane.
Yep. Like,
and vice versa.
We workers of the world unite. We have nothing to lose but our points. Okay? We are going to find a way to be in this together. And we are going to make it work for all of you. I am Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message. I hope you're proud of me, by the way, for my restraint in not putting on my very bad Brooklyn Jewish accent for when I did my Bernie Sanders bit there. I could have done it, and I really want everyone to understand just how much it took from me to not do that. Because as a Jew, that is like one of the 2 impressions I can do without being offensive.
It's okay because you're Jewish.
Yes, I'm allowed to do that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you should do it because I already got lambasted for doing terrible Cajun, which I knew was terrible Cajun.
I'm good. No, I feel like that's a pretty bad sales pitch. Like, hey, you should do this.
You know what?
Got everyone mad at me. You know what? That's a good way to convince me not to do something.
No, you know what? I retract that statement. I'm sorry. I should not have even suggested it.
Sure.
What I should have said instead is this. I did a thing that led to me getting lambasted. I hope that you are able to learn from my mistake and not have to suffer in the same way that I did. And also, I did suffer as a consequence to my actions, which caused the suffering of other people. And it was rightfully justified in me being lambasted.
Right, like they had to hear it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to effectively like pull the ladder up behind me and make you suffer as I suffered and make everyone suffer as a result, you know? So
I appreciate that.
Don't do it.
Yeah, it's the right mindset to have in the context of this conversation, a collectivist mindset, you know?
I agree. And it put me in that state of mind where I was like, you know, this is actually just wrong and I feel bad now.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to learn and grow together. Speaking of learning and growing together, do you want to talk about how mid Walken Torres is?
So I've been seeing some decks on the old internet, on the interwebs, and I've been like, this deck looks pretty bad, but I'm gonna try it because I couldn't really come up with anything for that guy because the options are kind of slim, unfortunately, for things that I really, really want to do. And even when you do them, it doesn't necessarily translate to a W, you know? So been copying other folks' decks, and lo and behold, mostly had that same experience. But there's some interesting stuff, some cool stuff where it's like a 3/4, not the absolute worst. It's not good, but it's not the worst. And it's like you get like a Korg with a Darkhawk or something, and then I queued into an Arsham player, and I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. But like I sort of needed them to have that handicap. In order for what I was doing to be good. So just in general, probably not great. But like, you know, saw some lists with like Agent Venom. For example. And it was like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'm down to play with that guy that doesn't involve me also playing with Havoc. So that was like fun and good and cool. But it's like, we just need some more ones, you know, just like maybe 1, maybe 2 more.
I don't even think it's the problem of that. It's like when you talk about the bounce deck, right? Like Bounce's fundamental problem is that the numbers in it aren't big enough, right? And
I agree with that for sure.
And so, like, when you play the Bounce deck against, like, I don't know, the ongoing deck with Doom 2099 in it, you just like lose. Like they just like have 30 power, and you're like, oh, I can never get to 30 power ever. Because the bounce deck is really good at getting to like 20 power because of a million demons, especially if you're playing Joaquin and stuff like that. But
Yep.
getting higher than that usually requires like doubled Red Guardian, no, doubled Rocket Raccoons or something like that. And it turns out it's actually really hard to hit a Rocket Raccoon on a Doctor Doom. Like they actually will figure out, hey, I shouldn't play that in the Walken Torres lane, and you'll be like, oh, well, I guess I get nothing then. So it's like, again, the deck is not bad. Like, I started with the Darkhawk Agent Venom build that Crazy posted, and I ended up taking out the Darkhawk and taking out the Korg and replacing them with Iron Patriot and Iceman. And it's like, that was actually pretty good. Like, it's not bad. It's like good at if you're playing against like a mid-range deck that doesn't get super tall, like against a Scream deck or whatever, you can get stuff done. Like, there's matchups where this is not terrible. But like anything that puts 26 power in 2 lanes, you just lose.
Yeah, definitely anything that beats like demon-sized full locations, right? Yeah, I was gonna say like it is pretty good at making like 6s and 7s, that kind of thing, and it's really tough to go taller than that. And you are a deck that goes sort of wide in a lot of instances where you're like, well, I got 20 in every location. Surely you can't beat that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, you're playing against decks that are making 30 in 2 locations and just like sacking the third one for the most part. So, man, it turns out a lot of people can. But what I would advocate for in terms of Joaquin, because I agree with what you're saying about the bounce stuff not going tall enough, is stuff that benefits Joaquin that isn't pigeonholed into being bounce related.
What would that even be? Because like anything that you want to do with Joaquin, you also almost by definition would want to bounce, because the point of repeating it is to do that.
Well, I think you're happy to bounce it, right? And I think if you're playing simply Falcon in addition to this thing, then that's cool. That's a flavor win, right? But ideally, it would be something along the lines of Silver Sable, which is like a fine card on its own. But if you do get to double it, then it's a little bit more impactful, you know? But like, and maybe that also requires like Joaquin to be like a 3/5 or something. I don't know. But asking you to also like Joaquin and then Hood and then specifically Falcon, it is way too much, and also just does not give you enough. So I don't know. It is the dev's job to figure out like what kind of one drop would be most effective in this sort of situation. It is definitely something that scales, right?
It would have to be something that gets you more than 6 power per 1 board slot. Like, it would have to be something that is meaningfully impacting that. Like, it would be like 1 energy hit monkey would do it. You know what I mean?
Or even something like Chavez does exist, right? But like something that is kind of like baby Gwenpool would maybe allow you to go tall enough in a specific location or something. And I think that is kind of the problem is going tall, not wide, right?
It's the height issue that the deck has. You could try playing Black Swan
you must
Hit
be
Monkey,
this tall,
right? If you play Black Swan Hit Monkey and you draw one without the other, you're doing absolutely fucking nothing. Because if you have Hit Monkey without Black Swan, congratulations, it's 9 power. Great job, dude. If you have Black Swan without Hit Monkey, you have used up your board space, and you're probably going to be able to fill the board anyway, at least in the locations that mattered. Like, what is it actually getting you? And so, like, you have this deck that just has no verticality to it in terms of a full 6-turn game, where it is able to be good, but the thing that holds it back from being great and genuinely a meta deck is that it just simply cannot get tall enough in an individual lane. It cannot hard focus an individual lane well enough. It can't do it. It has no Gilgamesh. The deck needs a Gilgamesh.
Yeah, Gilgamesh, Ajax card like that, right? But
and it can't really run any of those.
Yeah, 1/1 on reveal, +1, 3 random things in your hand. Like, is that a playable card? Is that a card that kind of fixes your issue? And is this a card that gets you away from the bounce stuff? I would guess that it doesn't get you away from the bounce stuff, because especially since it's a 1/1 on board, like I feel like the scaling also has to kind of apply to itself, you know?
Yeah, like what about like, okay, it's Hit Monkey, but it's a 1-drop. It has 0 power and gets +1.
Yeah, I think it is doing a lot of the same stuff where it's like, okay, it goes tall, but it still kind of incentivizes you to bounce it, right?
Yeah, but like I'm fine with incentivizing you to bounce.
Or
I'm fine if Joaquin
or
is a
clone
bounce
it.
card, right? Like
No,
that's fine with me.
I am too. I'm just saying, like, it has to. If it's a bounce card, it does have to solve the verticality problem. Maybe it does do that. I don't
Yeah.
know, but like, it could be a card that gets cloned, which is cool and fine.
Mhm.
And then it's like, I don't bounce it. I just frigate it, and then it allows you to go a little bit taller and also wider.
Yeah.
So
And this is why traditional bounce just kind of hasn't existed in a while. Is like move bounce solves the verticality problem because Human Torch is 85 power, right? Like that's like a really easy solve. It's like Human Torch is 128 power. It's good, yeah.
I was gonna say 85. I don't know that I've ever had a Human Torch that's specifically 85 power. That's a very interesting number. 128.
You get one to 80, and then you play it on Nidavellir. There you go.
All right.
It works. You can get them to 80 now. Like that actually happens a lot because Aranya is +1 now, so they tend to go like up to like 10, 20, and then 40, 80. It does actually work that way now. So there you go, 85. Okay, that's how we got there.
Nidavellir dependence.
Yes, Nidavellir dependence aside, 85. It's how we got it. It's fine. We got there.
All right.
But yeah, like Joaquin is running into problems with being an archetype specific card that in and of itself is not good enough to make that archetype better on its own or competitive in the metagame on its own. And there have been cards like this before that have been sleepers. I think a lot of people would have described Misery like that, and now she's amazing. And
I love Misery.
What a sentence. And now, like, there are cards. I think a lot of people. I was not one of these people, so I'll always pat myself on the back when I get the chance. Ajax. People thought Ajax was bad. He's obviously not, right? Like, there are cards that have been like this before, where it's like an archetype specific card that people think is underwhelming. And Joaquin's problems are metagame problems, where it's like, if enough stuff is nerf worthy in this metagame, if they hit Doom 2099, if they hit Scream, if they hit Surtur, if they hit like 4 or 5 decks that are outpointing you, if they're like, we need to actually bring the point ceiling of this whole game down a little bit, then suddenly Bounce is able to actually exist again. But until that happens, I'm not sure it is.
Well, the other way that you can do it, I'm not saying that they should, because this is maybe dangerous territory to step into, is that you do power creep the Joaquin stuff a little bit.
I don't know how you can.
If it does take releasing like a new card, not necessarily like we're certainly not going to make demons 7/7s or whatever, but so it would probably take a new card. And if you do have something like that increases its power output as well, then you're in a new kind of arms race. So yeah, it might take some nerfs or whatever. It may take a combination of like nerfs plus a new card potentially. But yeah, some sort of one drop that does improve your total power output, I think would be good. And I think you're right in that a lot of it is tied to bounce and is just kind of forever going to be tied to bounce, at least in terms of Falcon, if not Toxin and Beast as well. But you could eventually reach a state where it is not if you do have 3 1-drop cards that scale vertically, right? It is a density problem, but like if you do have like one cost hit monkey, then yeah, it is a bounce or a cloning thing for sure. But if you have 3 of them, maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe you're not a bounce deck anymore, but like I doubt that like next season we're going to get 3 1-drops that all do kind of the same thing too. So it's going to take a long time to get there.
2 things here. First, I do feel like the incentives for Joaquin and Bounce are so overlapping that it's going to be impossible to divorce them, and they should just get over that if they're worried about it. Like, the incentives are you have a 1-drop whose effect you want to repeat. That's the same picture. Like, that's what they're about, right?
Yeah.
And so, to me, it's just like, I don't even think they should think about it.
There's probably a design that breaks that paradigm. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure really what that looks like.
And is it worth looking for it, right? When
because
like, just go do the thing,
Yeah, and you would have to like make such a very, very specific card, and like I said, probably multiple of them in order to actually divorce them. Perhaps.
And
so
second
probably
thing,
not worth it.
Second thing, The data mined Red Wing, which was like a 1/2 that gave +2 to like the next one drop you played here or something like that. Like, I want to be super clear here. I'm like 95% sure that card was going to run into the exact same stuff Joaquin did. Like,
yeah, I didn't even see that card. That's interesting.
it was like it was a thing that people complained about. They were like, why would they nerf Red Wing? I was really excited for playing Bounce. It was like, trust me on this, you weren't. Like, as someone who has played Bounce recently, if you bought Walken Torres and then bought Red Wing, you would have been let down. I am so sure of that, because like we just talked about what Bounce issues are. Yeah, it can be helpful. Like, let's say you're actually getting that to like 10 or whatever. Like that's good, but it's not enough. Like, it gets you closer, but it doesn't get you there. And I think it needs a bigger shot in the arm from a Series 5 that only goes in one deck than it was going to get from Red Wing. And I think it needs a bigger shot in the arm than Torres is able to give either. People talk about making Torres a 2/3. Other than the obvious Lomal Falcons 2/3s thing, like, I don't even think that would solve the problem. Like, it would still be the same ceiling issue. You're still not getting enough numbers.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like the Black Swan thing that you were talking about, where like
Yeah.
if you draw Swan and hit Monkey together, that's really great because now you have a way to go very vertical.
Yeah.
But if you don't, she is just a 2/3, and I do think that 2/3 Black Swan is maybe a stronger card than 3/5 Black Swan or whatever she was on release. But like, her being a 5 power thing was very relevant.
I think if
And
they want to fix Black Swan, what they should do is give her an ability that gives her 1 point of power for every card you play on the turn that she does the activate.
interesting.
That would be like, that is actually like, I say it and you're like, wow, that's OP. And it's like, I think it would be good, but I don't think it would be busted. I think they could actually 100% do that.
Yeah, I think the other way to go about it, just because Activate ended up being like way clunkier, I think, than I envisioned. And certainly like Activate on a 3 cost card asks a lot of you. Because if you draw it on turn 6, I mean, I'm not playing that, you know. It's just a dead draw. It is completely useless for the most part. And if you draw it not exactly on curve, then you're also probably ideally doing something stronger on turn 4 or turn 5. Otherwise, you know, you draw it on turn 5 and you're like, well, now I have to play the blacks, or on not even on turn 5. If I draw it on turn 4, I like have to play the Black Swan because I want to activate it on turn 5 so that I can use it on turn 6. I get like, she's like a double delay too. So it's all just kind of brutal. I don't know.
I remember feeling this way with 3/5 Black Swan versus 2/3 Black Swan, because she was originally like data mined at 2/3, or maybe even released at 2/3, and they just forgot to like OTA it into the patch that she was.
No, yeah, I do remember that.
Something like that. So they're like, there was just a conversation that I remember having where I was like, I wasn't able to express what I am now about the ceiling. Like, I remember feeling the same thing I'm feeling now, but not being able to find the right words for it. And now I know the right words for it, which is like, maybe 3/5 Black Swan is a worse card, but the deck needs the points more than it needs the discount, right? Like, the deck needs the numbers in it. And for the record, I think you could do 2/2 Black Swan that gets +1 power for every card played on the activate turn. And that would be, you know, one of the best cards in the deck, but probably not busted.
Yeah, I think you could also do stuff where maybe you do 3/5, but like a static and not an activate. And maybe that's cracked.
I
I
think
don't
that
know.
sounds
But like,
cracked.
but like generally, how you use the card is a big turn with a hit monkey.
Right, but like that would be how you'd use the card, and then it would just be every turn you're getting every bounce card ever.
Yeah, and therein lies the problem, I think. And also there's stuff with like Thanos or whatever, where it's like maybe you're not doing hit monkey stuff, but you do just incidentally have a bunch of ones or whatever. But like, I don't know, maybe there's like some specific way you could do it that's not just completely hideous. Doesn't have just like the worst words on it ever. Magic does this so much where you look at a card and it's like, I get what you're doing, and I get why now there are like rails on it, because if you just did the uncapped version, it would be kind of busted or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just wish
you know, like
just
Nadu,
like
right? Nadu saying twice per turn really made that card actually function better, right?
Well, yeah, that's the other end of the spectrum, I think, where it's like you do put rails on it, and still just ends up being
that's my favorite thing ever. Is they were like, someone was like, how many times per turn? Twice? Yeah, that sounds right. Like, I actually,
that's fair.
I was a comma believer. Like, I was a comma truther with Nadu, where I was like, oh, they just left a comma off there. Like, I really did believe that. Like, that seems so believable to me. Where it's like, oh, someone just missed that. You know, that sounded so much more believable.
There is a fun fact that I want to tell you. Remind me to tell you after the podcast.
Chat, the watchers, I promise you, I'm going to tell you right now what this fun fact is. It's that I'm right. It is a comma thing.
No, it is not.
That is what he's going to tell me after the podcast. He can't actually respond right now because anything he says will allow you to determine via the use of negative space what it actually is. So that's what it is. And he can't say anything about it.
I was laughing at the comma thing because of how absurd it is.
That's exactly what someone covering something up would say.
It has something to do with a previous editing error that Wizards of the Coast made. That's
I
all.
see.
It is very much that. It is a fun fact.
Okay.
That I don't necessarily want to share because I don't want to put the person on blast.
Sure. So you're on notice, whoever made Nadu. I'm on to you. I've discovered both you and the conspiracy that Gerry is currently engaged in to cover up the fact you forgot to put a comma on your card.
Trust me, if I were bought by any corporation, it would not be Hasbro or its subsidiary Wizards of the Coast.
Did you see? We're in like the last 10 minutes here, but so I'm just gonna like go fully off the rails here. You saw the Azorius blue-white discussion on Twitter, right?
I saw some of it, but I very purposefully chose to not engage.
Too bad, motherfucker. We're talking about it now.
So tell me what it was, because like I think I can pick it up from context clues, but I don't know exactly like what stances people were taking. So I certainly never entered the comments section of any tweet that I saw.
Okay, so some person who shows up on my For You page sometimes tweeted a thing about Magic the Gathering that was like, I don't know, it was like something about whatever it was they said, though. She was like, I can't remember if it was like a derogatory comment or like a joke of some kind about blue-white players, right? But she said white-blue. Okay?
Okay.
And so someone responded to that, like a quote tweet dunk with the picture of the guy from Inglourious Bastards. Because, like, there's the scene in Inglourious Bastards where, like, this is how the Germans hold up 3, and, like, he was holding it up there. And so the guy in Inglourious Bastards is, like, staring at him because he's given away that he is an American spy because he's not holding up his fingers in the right way.
Yeah.
And so the context is calling it white-blue is like, I know what you are. You're a commander player. I have discovered this, right? And so
this person I think is Victoria, who
I don't know who that is. Literally just someone who shows up on my like For You page.
I also don't know who she is, never met her, but have seen tweets on my For You page.
Yes, that is the extent of my interaction.
Like, a cursory glance at her Twitter thing would reveal that, like, yeah, she plays commander. Like,
well, I think it's more like commander player as a byline for like not part of the community, right? And so,
commander player in parentheses derogatory.
Yeah, like commander player parentheses derogatory parentheses fucking casual parentheses like fake fan, right? And
are we not past that?
I have no idea, but the point I wanted to bring
realize that commander makes them way more money than comp players ever did.
Sure.
Like, I mean, come on.
Sure, but I it feels like what I wanted to talk about. None of the actual drama here, but the funniest part of it for me was like 95% of the people who saw the drama were not processing that what the guy was mad at. No one's ever actually mad on Twitter. They're just getting off dunks and being mean performatively because being mean is funny, right? But what was happening there was not he was saying, oh, you should call it blue-white. That's what he was saying, right? But like 95% of the comments were like, I'm never calling that Azorius. Which is just insanely funny to me because they thought it was about a totally different thing. They thought he was calling her like a fake fan about Azorius because
by not using the guild name, which a lot of old heads still refuse to use. And
yes, Meanwhile, like the actual
Dude,
thing is
I'm
what
just
you're
tired
actually
already
supposed to
from
call it is UW. I learned that from you. That's what you're actually supposed to call every deck. But what I wanted to ask you is why the fuck that's true? Why does blue come first in all of the blue decks? Why is it blue black? Why is it blue white? What the fuck is up with that?
So in my mind, both like as a content creator, like longtime student of the game, person who wrote articles with the intent to like convey information to
Yeah.
people, for example, I often defaulted to putting the dominant color first, like the most important color first. And in these traditional white blue control decks that people are thinking of, it is usually about specifically the card counterspell, which has
Right.
UU in its mana cost. And that means that you need lots of blue mana so that you have double blue available on turn 2. That inevitably means that your deck is primarily blue based. You will often have like some blue cantrips that can maybe find you your second white source for like a Wrath of God on turn 4 or something. So you know, maybe have like 18 blue sources and 16 white sources, and the blue component is more impactful like thematically to the style of deck that you are playing versus the white component, which is like the spot removal and
Right.
sweepers
The
and
Wrath of
distant
God or whatever, right?
right? But the frustrating aspect is like the counter spells and the card drawing and whatever. Like it's a blue deck because it's annoying as shit like a blue deck, not like a white deck.
Okay, so question then. Rug Titan. Bug Titan. Why did they start with R and B when they were clearly the least important colors in those decks?
Because Uger Titan doesn't really roll off the tongue.
Oh fuck, that's actually that actually Okay, yeah, no, that actually makes sense. I
never liked rug and bug as descriptors
Sure.
for things because I was like, yeah, it's not a rug deck. It has like a red card in it.
Right.
R
Okay.
first.
So like in your world you'd call it like UGR or UGB.
It depends on the era. You know,
Sure.
like now that folks have widely adopted like shards and guilds and whatever, like I'm fine with that. I used to not like it, but
I still hate it.
I've embraced it.
I still
It's
hate
fine.
it. First of all, I barely know the shard names, okay? I just being real, I barely know them. Second of all,
You know Naya.
I
know you
know,
know
I
Naya.
know, I know Naya, I know Jund. Everyone knows Jund, but no, like Jund also brackets derogatory.
Yeah.
Like that's the
But
concept.
you're a Naya Jun gamer. I get you.
I took a personality test and it said I was teamer primarily red. But like those are the ones I mostly don't know. The cons ones, no clue. Like you asked me teamer, that's as far as I go.
I was literally a developer on the set Cons of Tarkir, so I'm familiar.
So you
with
know
cons.
all of them? Okay, yeah. I thought the setup there was going to be like, and I don't know any of them.
No, I mean it would have been funny, but
it bothers me though. Like I'll tell you what does bother me. Use like people were saying, "Oh, I'm not going to call it Azorius," right? You fucking shouldn't because we're not on Ravnica. If we're on Ravnica and we're playing Azorius cards, you can call it Azorius, but you should not call every blue-white deck Azorius ever. Actually, you fucks. That is what really bothered me.
Blue-white means a different thing on Ravnica than it does on, you know, whatever their new name for Kaladesh is. I have not learned that yet.
Avishkar.
Right? Avishkar. Okay.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I've only ever seen it written on Twitter.
Yeah, so I totally get that, and I agree with you, but it's weird because, like, okay, during Ravnica Standard, you know, maybe this blue-white deck, I'm sorry, white-blue deck does feature some, like, Azorius cards, right? Like, Supreme Verdict has, like, the Azorius stamp on it in the text box and stuff like that, the watermark.
Azorius cards have a very specific flavor and design intent behind them because on Ravnica, the blue-white cards are like, you know, the Senate and lawmakers, and generally they carry the connotation on the card of like taxing you or locking you down, where like that is not a guaranteed characteristic across blue-white cards. It's like specific to this.
So here's the thing. It's standard on Ravnica. You have Azorius themed cards. Maybe you call it Azorius Control.
Yes.
At the same time, there is also a modern format with a blue-white control deck. Doesn't have Azorius characteristics or cards.
At all.
So you have the same deck effectively, but you're calling it different things. I don't like that.
I get that, but still.
So I think my solution at the time was, well, we can't really use Azorius. It doesn't make sense. But here's the thing. Language evolves, right?
Yes.
Azorius no longer, in my mind at least, refers to specifically the guild. It is kind of like a shorthand descriptor for a way to just describe like blue-white stuff in general, not necessarily specifically how you would find it on Ravnica or whatever, but like when you say Azorius now, you're conveying a specifically different thing than Azorius on Ravnica. It's just like blue and white cards, right? Like that is what Azorius means now. It means a different thing when we're back on Ravnica.
You are the authority in this area.
I'm not. I think if you ask Cedric Phillips, he would be the authority. He would say that he's the authority.
Sure, but like you're definitely more of an authority than me. Like in terms of the magic, like the community, in terms of basically everything involved, I mean nothing. So my discomfort at calling things guild names off of Ravnica is just me being a boomer, right? I'm out of touch with the children now. But the point I wanted to make is everyone in the comments who was like, oh, well, I wouldn't call it Azorius. Like, not only just misunderstanding the situation, but misunderstanding it in such a way as to be like, also just, in my opinion, just wrong as hell, because you shouldn't call it Azorius anyway. Like, the fact that that was like what seemed to be the majority response to this, I realized a bunch of other people took away like big takeaways about misogyny and like picking on women specifically in order to make your points about Magic players and what that actually means.
In my card game?
But my takeaway from it was, I hate everyone who says the word Azorius. That's actually my takeaway. Like, yes, there's an actual genuinely important conversation to be had here, probably, or at least something to consider, real food for thought. But instead of actually having any of that food, what if I snacked over here on the dessert bar of I hate everyone who says the word Azorius?
What if every time you think about the word Azorius, it plays in your mind like the I don't know if it's actually called Notorious, but it's like the dance song in Donnie Darko where they're doing like sparkle motion.
I thought you were going for there's a Notorious B.I.G. song, Notorious Thugs, with him and Bone Thugs and Harmony, that starts with the, like them doing like it starts with like Notorious. And now I can hear Azorius in that tone. That's where I thought you were going. That's where I thought you were going with that. Anyway, yeah, it kills me. It kills me, dude.
Well, now it's gonna
I don't know
like that. So just sit on it a little bit. Let me know how you feel next week.
All right. I will say that the funniest lore decision there's a lot of really funny Magic lore decisions, but one of the funniest lore decisions they've ever made is to be like, here's Ravnica. It is a planet that is a giant city. Also, one of the groups on Ravnica does not live in the giant city. It's a giant city. The whole planet is a city. And there's also apparently...
Show me a map.
They invented like a wilderness just to put the red-green guys there. They were like, we can't have this whole planet be a city, despite that being the conceit of the planet. So also we have to have the Gruul who live in the wilderness.
It's like the Safari Zone in Pokemon or whatever.
They actually just like made a Safari Zone for people and ogres with two heads. And they were like, that's world. It rocks so hard.
It's just like, you're not trying to live in walkable cities, you know?
Yeah.
You're not about that life. All right. Well, yeah, we'll carve out a few blocks for you.
The other funny thing about Ravnica to me is that like the Rakdos existing at all implies like in the real world, there's like a sort of governmental indictment of like bad behavior that is tolerated or tacitly supported by a government, right? Like you see right now, whenever we do foreign interventions or whatever, there's backlash on the government. And in Ravnica's lore, there's just like literally clown blood cultists who are like constitutionally required to exist Via the magical constitution, you just have to tolerate these literal killer clown blood cultists running around your city, killing people. And if they didn't exist, apparently the whole world would blow up or something. Whatever happens when the guild pact gets sundered.
All identities are valid, KM.
It's just like it rocks so hard. Early Magic stuff, and it hurts me a little to call Ravnica early Magic because it's like 2003, but it is objectively. There's just like so many hilarious decisions like that where they like before they sort of refined what colors could mean, and like that you could have something other than, oh, he's using black mana, he's the bad guy. Like what? Everything is just like it's like horoscopes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
nah, you're right. It's just like, what do we do for Rakdos in the city? You know, it's just I guess it's the insane clown posse.
It's the insane clown posse living in sewers, kidnapping and torturing people. But also, if they didn't exist, the world would get blown up or something. Like it's just like everyone who was like a huge fan of Joker is just like in a group together where they all act on all of their urges. And if for 1 second you were like, should we change the status quo? Any attempt to change the status quo ends up breaking every magical law that keeps the entire planet safe. So suck it, you can't do that. Just incredible.
It's like the movie Speed, but with hedonism.
It's such an awesome decision to make. Like it just rocks so hard that they
and then to run it back and run it back again and again because it's just so popular and beloved.
They're still there and getting stupider. Like every successive set, the Rakdos have something even stupider and dumber cooked up. Some sort of even more cartoonish thing. In the 2019 Ravnica, they were literally a blood circus. They would just do tricks on it. They would kill you and do tricks on it. And it was just like, that was their thing. And if you were like, maybe that should be illegal, actually, you're an asshole.
Yeah, how dare you?
It's such a cool...
This is just what they do. This is what they like.
It rocks so hard. That's just such a cool setting.
They do have an opportunity, though, where you could flesh out the world building and do like some kind of character development where the Rakdos cultists end up deciding that there's this other like Rakdos thematic thing that we could do or become. Like we actually don't have to be blood cultists or like circus murderers or insane clown posses. 20 years and they've
just been the Joker for 20 years.
Yeah. We just been joking, because that's all we knew.
Well, it's
so maybe there's another way.
It's such a cool setting. It rocks so hard. Shout out to the Rakdos cult, legally enshrined constitutionally protected, the Rakdos cult. Hell yeah, brother. And on that note, I believe it's time to end. You got any final messages, Gerry? Anything that really touched your heart today?
Dude, I'm in Portland. I'm at the regional championship for Magic the Gathering. Just been hanging out with folks all weekend, and like I've been living on the East Coast for the last 5 years or so, and this is my first time making it out to the West Coast really, and seeing these people I haven't seen in like 5, 6, 7 years. It has been wonderful. I'm having an awesome time.
And I just watched both Patrick Mahomes and Drake get humiliated on live TV. It's been a good day for me as well. Thank you so much for watching. I've been KMBest. He has been Gerry Thompson. I am pointing the wrong way. He has been Gerry Thompson. And we will see you in the next one.